bill for second reading.
The Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of a bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children in the commission of an offense and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. This act aims to punish any adult who would compel, coerce, induce, or invite a child being a person under the age of 18 years to engage in a crime under the Criminal Code, the Crime Control and Justice Act, or the Misuse of Drugs Act. The offense also extends to any adult who controls or supervises the criminal activity, or gives an order, instruction, guidance, or makes a request with respect to the carrying on of criminal activity. Furthermore, the adult will have committed the offense whether they knew or were reckless as to whether the person is a child, and may be convicted of the offense regardless of whether the child engages in the criminal activity or is prosecuted for or is found guilty of an offense. This government views the protection of our children from exploitation as a necessity to ensure the prosperous future of our country, and therefore any adult who is found guilty on summary conviction will be subject to a term of imprisonment for 2 years and to a term of imprisonment for 5 years if found guilty on indictment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Member for College.
Good day, Mr. Speaker and honourable members. Mr. Speaker, may I please make reference to my notes? Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the bill being proposed because I believe we need to tackle the root cause of juvenile crime to prevent the problem from recurring. This bill merely covers one factor of the reason for the involvement of our youth in criminal activity, and this pertains to the influence of an adult. This bill was made for the youth and should then focus on the youth. I would like to remind the ruling party to keep into consideration the amount of such cases in Belize when compared to the most major factors. I look at this bill and I think, what does this really solve? Because the real concern isn't who, it's why. Why does it happen in the first place? But additionally, what do we aim to achieve from jailing more people? And what position do kids find themselves in that they can't say no? These are all questions to be considered, Mr. Speaker, but my focus today is on one major factor. Have we thought about the amount of violence that our youth is exposed to on a daily? 99% of the Belizean youth have been exposed to violence in comparison to 58% from another Caribbean country, Jamaica, according to Gale and Mortis in 2010. Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of a story that was once narrated to me that I'm urged to share with everyone listening. A story about a mother and her son who resided in crime-driven neighborhoods. They'd seen it all, they'd heard it all. They'd seen the guns and they'd heard the gunshots. One seemingly ordinary day, they decided to take a quick trip to the supermarket. The little boy finds himself drawn toward one specific toy in the children's section. It could have been anything, but what was it? A toy gun. The mother urged him to pick up anything else, but the little boy insisted. And what was his response? I want it, Mom. It looks just like the one that was in that man's hand. I'm sure many such incidents are to exist, but they all reinforce the same fact, that youth exposure to violence will be an important risk factor for future perpetration of violence. I would like to summarize this factor by reminding us all of an important point of Article 4 in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The government has a responsibility to, and I quote, create an environment where you can grow and reach your potential. I would like to conclude by proposing a bill to provide programs to identify students at risk of joining gangs and to enforce lessons to parents on effective parenting. The program would also offer counseling to students, offer after-school activities, retreats, extracurriculars, and community service to ensure that they have their hands full and don't fall prey to gang leaders looking for idle children. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Lake Independence.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes? According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, Belize has a population of roughly 420,000, about half being under the age of 18. In our country, crimes involving children has always been a big issue. The Belize Crime Observatory statistics show from between the years of 2016 to 2018, there has been a growth in crimes. Between the years 2020 and 2021 alone, approximately 9,300 guns and firearms were confiscated, not from youth, but adults. How many of these guns are placed in our children's hands to commit robbery and murder? This bill is brought about to ensure that our children are not being coerced into such crimes. Channel 6 has reported that from January to November of this year, 2021, Belize has suffered from 90 murders. 9 of these reported to being children under the age of 18. Just 3 days ago on the news, it was reported that 17-year-old Cameron Hernandez had succumbed to the bullet wounds. Yet another child, another leader of our generation, taken away from his family. The UNCRC, United Convention on the Rights of a Child, Article 6 states, you have the right to be alive. Our role as the government of Belize is to ensure that these rights are honored, that our children survive and experience a good life. There are many children, as the bill states, who have been exploited by these adults under the offense of the misuse of drugs, the Firearms Act, and the Criminal Code. It is very important that these children learn and know their rights and how this bill acts behind these rights. The violence needs to stop. And Article 19 in the UNCRC states, you have the right to be protected from being hurt and mistreated in body and mind. I want to finish off by reading Article 36 of the UNCRC as it states, you have the right to protection from any kind of exploitation being taken advantage of. This bill is the start of a solution to this issue. As my other members of Parliament, I support the motion of this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Freetown.
Bismillah. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Speaker, may I please refer to me? As having been said, and to continue being pressed on, youths are being influenced by adults to engage in criminal activity. The bill, Criminal Justice, Exploitation of the Children in Commission of Offences Bill 2021, is a goal to be an act to protect these children who are falling prey into the hands of adults recruiting them into the crime and violence we see today. As a youthful minister myself, I have become interested in many things because my mind is still growing and I am still young. Teenagers, much like myself, are still figuring out what they want to do. But having these crime-compelling adults who are to be seen as the more knowledgeable ones, recruiting these children, inviting them into such a destructive environment will cause a great downfall in our country. People, your community, your district, your town, our country are to be in the hands of the teenagers, children, and the young adults that you see today. If nothing is being done to stop these adults from inducing the promising youthful children of Belize, then expect no future. Article 36 in the Convention of the Rights of the Child states, you have the right to protection from any kind of exploitation being taken advantage of. Something has to be done. We should commence our starting point. And with the diligence, intelligence, and a need for change, portrayed and to be continued to be displayed by my fellow parliamentarians, it should start now. Thank you.
recognize the honorable member for Orange Walk South.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker, may I please make reference to my notes? Today, I stand before you all to give my full support to the Criminal Justice Exploitation of Children in the Commission of Offenses Bill 2021. There is no doubt that in the past years there has been an increase in the rate of children being both victims and perpetrators of crime. With this said, today I would like to start off by addressing the matter in the area of Orange Walk South. Children are being exploited in the way that they are going to work in sugar plantations and in farming. Article 36 in the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child states, and I quote, "A child has the right to protection from any kind of exploitation." I believe that if the passage of this bill is allowed, then the government will be encouraged to give the youth more educational opportunities in the agricultural sector so that they do not turn to a life of crime. Article 28 in the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child states, and I quote, "A child has the right to a good quality education. A child should be encouraged to go to school to the highest level they can." We need more entrepreneurs in Belize. Entrepreneurship and innovation will lead to the opening of more industries, which would mean more income to the country, which then we can also say that when opening industries, there will be more job employment. And since there will be more income in the country, then we will have a lower cost of living in Belize. And that is what we need because most people can't afford some things nowadays. In conclusion, I would like to say a happy Children's Day to every child who is watching us. And let us keep in mind that the children are our present and our future. And we must stay united to see the change in Belize, to see a decrease in the rate of crime and violence. With the help of God, let us stop this criminal injustice. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Cayo South.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I please refer to my notes? Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this bill, which requires our utmost attention. Juvenile delinquency is a serious problem that affects offenders, communities, and society, that is, as a whole, on a physical, emotional, and at an economical level. Many Belizean youths are jailed or sent to homes for delinquency each year and even participate in or they are at a risk for participating in wrongful behaviors. Our children and teens face a variety of obstacles, including the possibility of jail, school dropout, drug use, and an increase in adult criminality. Many of which, Mr. Speaker, are the root causes of our children being lost to these unlawful villains in our society: gang leaders, sexual abusers, etc. An integrated trauma survey was carried out in 19 schools in 2009 by Dr. Herbert Gill, where he stated that 353 students between 12 and 21 years of age had undergone a traumatic event at some point in their lives, which then led them to display aggressive, violent behavior. Also, according to Karen Kinnear, a paralegal and academic investigator with over 25 years of experience in sociology, states that children who are abused have many harmful consequences that persist through their lives. Many of these children end up having different short-term and long-term behavioral issues. Hence, Mr. Speaker, it is so unfair for these youths to be punished without punishing the agent behind these children and youth delinquent behaviors. If I may recall, Mr. Speaker, Article 6, Section 1 and 2 from the Convention of the Rights of a Child states that all children have the right to life and that the government should ensure that children survive and develop healthy. It is also stated in Article 3 that all organizations concerned with children should work together for the best of each child. However, World Vision showed that globally an estimated 800 million children live in environments where child rights are often denied and childhood are stolen by abuse, exploitation, and slavery. Further proving that the issue at hand needs to be addressed immediately. Today, I stand up to a question too emotional to ask, not to mention answer. Why is it that the children of our nation is not cherished, sustained, and protected? Why is it taking us so long to act? Why is it that the agents who are supposed to protect children lead them to harm? I demand, Mr. Speaker, that we hear our children's cries and address them. Together as a government, a parliament, and a community, we must all play a role in protection of our children and our youths. These agents of crime must be held accountable. Our children deserve nothing less. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield my time.
I recognize the honourable member for Stanley Creek West.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. May I refer to the notes? Mr. Speaker, I arise today in support of this bill entitled Criminal Justice Exploitation of Children in the Commission of Offense. As the honorable member from Lake Independence mentioned, 50% of the population of Belize are under the age of 18. Belize is a young nation. Let's protect it. Belize has been plagued with crime and violence for years. It is time to put a stop to this. Enough is enough. The youths are the future of our country. The UNCRC, which Belize is a signatory to, Article 3 states, all adults should do what is best for you. When adults make decisions, they should think about how their decisions will affect the children. To add, the Article 6 in the UNCRC states, you have the right to be alive. Therefore, let's protect the future of our country. Teenagers in Belize have the right to protection from exploitation, violence, and abuse, and the right to a green and safety environment. Furthermore, any adult who compels, coerces, induces, or invites a child to engage in criminal activity, knowing or being reckless as to whether that person is a child, commits an offense. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Corozal North.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honourable members of this honourable House. It is my pleasure to stand before you today to speak on behalf of the constituency of Corozal North and on behalf of each and every child in this country. Mr. Speaker, as I sit and listen to this bill proposal from the government, it drives me to ask many questions. I do urge the government to find ways and solutions to tackle the areas where children are involved in criminal activities as best as possible. Mr. Speaker, when I sit at home in the evening and I turn on my TV, of course it is 6 o'clock, and I watch the news, and I see the continuous engagement and involvement of children in criminal activities, it drives me to ask simple questions. What have we done? What are we doing? And what will we do to tackle these areas and prevent children from engaging in criminal activities? Well, Mr. Speaker, if you ask me, it is very simple. First, in regards to the children, there must be an improvement in investment of programs for these children. Mr. Speaker, I am a man of truth. The truth of the matter is, these kids are at home with nothing to do and enough time on their hands to do the wrong things. Besides, Mr. Speaker, in regards to the influencers, there must be ways to help these people. Because, Mr. Speaker, like I've said before, I'm a man of truth. The truth of the matter is, these influencers have nothing to do as well. So they create jobs for themselves and for these children. And the word in the street, Mr. Speaker, we need to eat. That is the word in the street. We need to eat. The government should be focusing not on criminalizing these people, but rather on providing for these people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Belize Rural Central.
Mr. Speaker, I come in representation of the Belize Rural Central, and I believe I speak for majority of Belizeans when I say that I am all for the bill. Mr. Speaker, may I make reference to my notes? I must say, enough is enough, as we have seen too many young kids and teenagers being coerced into a life of crime. Violence and crime is at an utmost high in our small country. Too many innocent lives are being lost daily. Kids and teenagers who would have had bright futures are now gone and taken from us too soon. 2021 alone has shown a spike in crimes and murders despite our continuous lockdowns and curfews. A quick review into our statistics, and you find that major crimes that occur in Belize has increased to a total of 4.9% from January to August in comparison of last year, 2020. Shootings increased a total of 14% this year. Murder also increased by 18%. Burglary increased by 6%, and robbery increased by 1%. Clearly, the facts show that the system is failing us. A quick visit down memory lane reminds us of all the senseless murders done to innocent teenagers. To make things worse, many of these crimes are committed by rival teenagers. Most of these incidents being directly linked to gang-related activities. It is more than obvious that our system is in dire need of reform. I must say that we have failed to look in the right direction. This bill is a step in that right direction. We must start holding adults who are coercing our youth into making these horrendous decisions accountable for these actions. Whilst a child must face the consequences for their actions, we must ensure that it does not end there. Masterminds must face even worse sanctions. Our children are being deprived of what is rightfully theirs. As mentioned earlier, this is a step in the right direction. Now, we must combat the issues from its inception. We must begin by improving the lives of the children of Belize. Yes, again, I must say I am in full support of the bill. Let us start to protect our children by getting them off the streets and away from unscrupulous adults who only exploit them. This will ensure a safer, happier, and peaceful Belize. We must return to our old morals, which have shown success as we have strayed in the wrong direction. Let us end this exploitation. Our children are the future, and we must protect them now.
to ensure the future of Belize. As the government, we must, we should, we will do better. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Caribbean Shores.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, my fellow members in Parliament. As previously stated by my other honorable members, Belize's population is roughly estimated to be over 400,000, with almost half of this population being under the age of 18 years. Mr. Speaker, it saddens me to say, and pains my heart, that this is the exact age range that this bill is directed towards, coerce and groom young children into criminal and illegal acts. Young men from the ages of 12 to 17 are being sought out and recruited into gangs. But not just any young men, Mr. Speaker, but the vulnerable young men of our community, of our country. The vulnerable young men who lack valid father figures. The vulnerable young men who lack a sense of community. The vulnerable young men who live in poverty. Mr. Speaker, what is a child who lacks no sense of belonging to do when people come after them for that exact same reason and give them that sense of community to ensure their loyalty to them? Mr. Speaker, 50% of the children in our country under the age of 15 lives in poverty. And these gang members are using that statistic to entice young men into handling firearms, selling drugs, and other such offenses under the guise of making money. And these young men, hoping to provide for their families, do such offenses. As we say in Creole, no worry, ma. I'll go make some money for we go eat dinner tonight. Mr. Speaker, the children of this country are the future of this country, and the future of this country is currently in the hands of people who wish to criminalize them and make them do violent acts. The future of this country is heading down a bloody road. On behalf of the Division of Caribbean Shores, I am in full support of the criminal justice exploitation of children in the Commission of Offenses Bill 2021 into the future of this country that's currently watching a blessed Children's Day.
I recognize the honorable member for Corozal Sultans.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, fellow colleagues. Mr. Speaker, may I please refer to my notes? I rise in solidarity with my fellow colleagues in support of the Criminal Justice Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, I would like to bring to your attention 3 articles of the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child, anchoring my position on Article 3. Article 6 states, a child has the right to live. Article 19 states, a child has the right to be protected from being mistreated or hurt in body or mind. Article 3 states, and I quote, in all actions concerning children, whether undertaken by public or private social welfare institutions, courts of laws, administrative authorities, or legislative bodies, meaning that all adults should think about the best interests of children when making decisions that affect them. Children are not born gang members. Directly or indirectly, children are recruited by adults in a position of power. Adults who seek and take advantage of the vulnerability of these children, looking for father figures and role models. I am in full support of the Criminal Justice Bill 2021. The Criminal Justice Bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children the commission of an offense, holding these recruiters and groomers accountable. I believe that the certainty of a punishment is a strong deterrent. So let us make it certain that adults who recruit children into criminal activities are sure of their penalties. When an adult decides to recruit a child into a gang or put a gun in the hands of a child, they should think about how this affects the child. By not doing so, these adults are directly taking away the rights of these children. As a government, we have a collective responsibility to ensure that all children's rights are protected. Let's make certain the people who walk over these rights face the consequences. These reckless behaviors need to come to an end. Given the ever-increasing and endemic impact of armed violence on children, supporting the bill is protecting children's rights. How can we not support something that protects victims of manipulation, protects children? Today being International Children's Day, how can we not support a bill that protects 50% of our population? Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Toledo West.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Speaker and fellow parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, may I please refer to my notes? Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to this bill, which seeks to further strengthen the protection of our children. As mentioned in Article 3 of the UNCRC, and I quote, all adults should do what is in the best interest of a child. This right, Mr. Speaker, has been overlooked and breached for many years, but with the passage of this bill, it demonstrates, Mr. Speaker, that this government is committed to the protection of its children. And today, Mr. Speaker, as I am here in representation of the children of Toledo West and all the children across the country of Belize, I fully support this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Cayo Northeast.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. I rise in support of the Criminal Justice Bill 2021. Mr. Speaker, an IDB study conducted in Belize City in 2019 stated that gang-involved individuals were recruited at the average age of 14.5. This means that the majority of them were recruited in their adolescent years. An additional 10% of youth in the city are at risk for gang involvement because they're exposed to the many risk factors, such as being financially unstable or needing a sense of protection and security. The gang-involved individuals reported of being expelled, suspended, or dropping out of school. It's alarming that more than 50% of them reported to having a somewhat easy access to guns or having at some point participated in a shooting. Mr. Speaker, recent statistics from the Belize Police Department state that for the first 10 months of 2021, a total of 745 crimes have been reported. It's alarming that the Cayo district is the second district with the most crimes committed within this period, with a total of 166 crimes. Now, looking closer at the murder rate, there has been a total of 90 murders committed within this period, 28 of them committed in the Cayo district. Most of them attributed to gang violence, which reflects an increase in 17 murders as compared to this same period in 2020. Mr. Speaker, these senseless murders have once again grabbed our attention. What we face today is a different level of crime. Article 6 on the Conventions of the Rights of a Child states that every child has the right to be alive, yet innocent youth are being brutally murdered, some of which have been committed by youth. These statistics reflect the reality that we are living here in Belize. 8 minors killed from mid-July to mid-September 2021. Who would have imagined this happening in our beloved Belize? Mr. Speaker, with the passage of this bill, it may discourage gangs from recruiting vulnerable youth, and as a result, will lower the crime rate here in Belize. The youths will be expected to stay in school, being active and learning, keeping away from the crime and violence in the community. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all the youth in Cayo Northeast and the entire Belize, I give my full support to this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Mesopotamia.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and fellow honorables. Mr. Speaker, may I be granted the permission to reference my notes? Mr. Speaker, I rise today to oppose this bill. Children are smart. From a young age, they learn what moral senses are. Children are fully aware what is right from wrong. Although adults have a responsibility to set and to be a good example to children and adolescents, youths must be held accountable to a certain extent for the crimes that they commit. As much as children are capable of doing excellent things with their lives, they are capable of committing horrendous crimes, as we have seen over the past few years. We must protect the children of Belize no matter what the circumstances are. Why take away an adult from a child? When you incriminate an adult, you take away someone's parent, someone's guardian, someone's sister or brother. This puts a child in a terrible position. They have to do whatever they can, whatever is necessary to get basic human necessities, to put food on their plates, to get money. They have no choice. They involve themselves in gangs, selling drugs, robberies, and the list goes on. I cannot stress this enough. I insist that we focus on main root causes. Stemming from childhood, children have to experience things like abuse, such as sexual, emotional, physical, verbal, bullying, dysfunctional homes. These things motivate, give children reasoning and opportunities to commit crimes and to be violent. I emphasize that children are the present now as much as they are the future. So what do? We give the children of Belize hope. Hope that they can do good. Hope that they can break the cycle of dysfunctionality, and hope for a better Belize. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Pickstock.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, all present, and to the children, a happy Children's Day. May I please have permission to reference my notes? In a presentation given by Assistant Commissioner Police Jones, he mentioned fear is built within youths because of ongoing violence and crime. This creates unproductive teens, which is a huge constraint to participate in activities. In support of the bill, I assure you that the influencers will be held accountable while deterring crimes and allowing further participation. Another effect is the continuity of crime and future victimization of children. And once more, in support of the bill, I assure you that the influencers be held accountable while deterring crimes and allowing children to enjoy all rights as listed in the CRC. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this bill demonstrates Belize's commitment as a country to protect our children. I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank all the children of the Pickstock community and across our country for the privilege to be a voice and encourage all parliamentarians to support the passage of this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Fort George.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes? I rise here today in full support of the bill being presented. As stated in Article 3 on the Conventions on the Rights of a Child, adults should do the best for us. But are they? We are all here for a reason, to represent the children and adolescents of our country. Our children that are vulnerable. They are listening and they are watching all adults around them. They are looking up to all of us. As my fellow members stated, the crime of recently are with our youth. Our youth are being killed by adults. How can we feel safe in our country? If this bill is passed, many will have that feeling of relief, knowing that the government is doing something for them. As stated in Article 36, we have the right to protection from any kind of exploitation. This bill is promoting this as is, the protection of children. This can be done in many ways. One being the making of a recreation center where children can go to be productive, to learn basic to complex things, which also provides the opportunity for other organizations such as UNICEF to help in their development of their future. So, as a body, as Belizeans, as the next generation of this country, we are doing our part. I would like to state again that I am in full support of this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Corozal Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes? As I rise here today in support of the Criminal Justice Bill on the exploitation of children in the commission of offense, I would like to speak on issues that have huge implications on the billing, including poverty and cognitive development. Magic Johnson once said, "All kids need is a little help, a little hope, and someone to believe in them." I believe that parents should serve as moral compasses, because when a child grows, it is the duty of the parent to stimulate the child so as to become formidable and have a good character. Also, Mr. Speaker, this bill would allow adults to think twice. For example, if a child is doing wrong and the adult is not, then this adult should discipline this child. But if the adult stays silent, that silence is encouraging that child to do wrong. In addition to this, the bill will also lower the country's statistics. Before 2016, the Corozal district has been known as the safest district in Belize. But lately, it has been of great concern to the citizens. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to emphasize on the cognitive development of a child, which comes later on in his or her life. We should not force a child unwillingly to be engaged in criminal behavior. If we do so as adults, we should be held accountable. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the involvement of poverty. Many parents or adults compel their children despite these unfortunate circumstances. I believe that the parent is responsible for the livelihood of their children, and they should be held accountable. On behalf of the children in my constituency and in Belize, I am in full support of this bill because it would not only help us to build the future for our young people, but rather to build our young people for the future. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Belize Rural North.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker, may I read from my notes? I rise in support of this bill, Criminal Justice Exploitation of Children in the Commission of Offenses, Bill 2021. May I say, isn't it a shame to always watch outside news and hear that Belize is always categorized as 1 out of 10 most crime-ridden urban spaces in the globe? We need to be the change, and as parliamentarians, we are to We hold the reins to change. Let's be the change by supporting this bill. Article 3 of the UN Convention on the Right of a Child states that adults should do what is best for you. When adults make decisions, they should think about how their decisions will affect children. And as my fellow member said, are the adults thinking about children when they're making the decisions? Therefore, Article 3.1 of the bill states that those adults that compel or invite a child to engage in criminal activity commit offense. Furthermore, Article 4 of the UN CRC states that the government has responsibility to make sure your rights are protected. They must help your family to protect your rights and create an environment where you can grow and reach to your maximum potential. This bill does so by eliminating, lowering criminal and violent activity by persecuting, punishing, and imprisoning those that are liable for imprisonment. I know that this bill won't automatically eliminate crime and violence all at once, but it can help minimize it step by step until we reach our goal. I fully support this bill on behalf of my constituency and many voices of the youth countrywide. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Fire North.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and the members of this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, may I ask permission to refer to my notes? As an activist, I have come along many interesting stories. For instance, one interesting story that stood out the most to me involved a mother, her two 13-year-old sons, and a deceased father. This scenario stood out the most to me for the mere fact that the father was brutally murdered by someone who is the same age as his two 13-year-old sons. So, the honorable members of this House, what should we tell our children when they see that someone their age is capable of committing such heinous act? What should we tell them? As the area representative for Kaya North, I support this bill. I support this bill for the mere fact that this bill will help to put an end to crimes that rob our children the future of this country. Also, I support this bill because it will help to put an end to the hindrance of our livelihood in Belize. So, while we ensure that we must ensure that our children are not roped into committing criminal activities, we must do our utmost best as a responsible country that acts in the spirit of the United Nations Convention on the Right of a Child to ensure that it is not even an option for them, for us, as a young nation, to commit criminal activity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the honorable member for Queen Square.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and my fellow honorable members. May I please refer to my notes? In accordance to the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of a Child, agreements have been concurred to protect each child in this nation. As I was sitting here listening to the other honorable members talking, I noticed we can reference Articles 6, 19, and 36 of the CRC, and we can see the importance of them. After hearing these, can we truly say that that is happening in this nation? As far as we know, the bill addresses that any adult who compels, forces, induces, or invites a child to engage in criminal activity, knowing or being reckless as to whether that person is a child, commits an offense. If there are already rights set in place, What is the true meaning of a summary conviction to the imprisonment of 2 to 5 years? I suggest that the person who commits these offenses be charged and be sent to imprisonment for the time of the convicted crime plus the additional time from the given bail, and there should be more programs targeted to the youth and adults. But most of all, I strongly believe that we have to stricken the liability on the victim and perpetrator so both parties can be held accountable. This is unfortunate though, because many criminal offenses are esteemed socially accepted and the society is losing sight to its morals. If we impose harsher policies, the adult crime rate should decrease and vulnerable children would have the ability to make a choice before engaging in these criminal activities. As macro trends on Belize's crime rate and statistics shows, Belize has a high crime rate of 37.79% in 2017 alone, and is still continuously rising. Hence, with a modified bill that punishes both parties, the crime rate on youths would decrease. As you can see, Mr. Speaker, criminal operations usually happen when one side is being punished and the other side is being let off the hook. If we let children go without punishment, they themselves can grow up to be criminal influences themselves. As the famous phrase says, spare the rod, spoil the child. This notes that its discipline is necessary for the good upbringing of youth in this nation. I believe that the children of Queen Square and the children of this entire nation deserves a chance to live in a peaceful and prosperous society. Now, it all leads back to us. Will we be the change to implement stronger measures so for the betterment of the youth? Will we? That is all I have to say.
Recognize the honorable member for Orange Walk East.
Mr. Speaker and members, I will make my contribution as the area representative of Orange Walk East and children of Belize. Happy Children's Day. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes? Do you think if it was to be your child doing this, you should be held accountability for their crime? I believe that parents should not be held responsible for the crimes committed by their children because they did not force them to commit crimes on their children. Because humans have their own hearts, they would have committed these crimes anyways, even if their parents did not tell them. Research shows that not only do parents influence their children's behavior, but society plays a big role. Children are often under the influence of inappropriate peer-pressure, leading to inappropriate behavior, such as committing crimes. On behalf of all the youth at Orange Walk East and children of Belize, I am in full support of this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Cayo Central.
Good day, my fellow honorable parliamentarians. Speaker, may I please refer to my notes? Due to the environment youth are raised in Belize, as we can see, many are less vulnerable to gangs. Due to this bill, it will help us in so many ways, but I would just like to point out one of the main factors that it will help us in. As we all may know, teens are being killed due to gun violence. Just in the time from June to November, 9 teens were killed. Take Laddie, Jalik, who was trying to go home while he was killed. In Article 6 of the Children's Rights say, you have a right to live. As we can see, these teens' lives are being cut short due to gun violence and these monsters who we call our friends, family, or even family friends that we trust and support in anything they do, but not in killing of crime. And not only his life was cut short, as well as Kwame Williams from Dangriga town. We
We all know they did not live their life to the fullest, and also these teens who have passed away over the past years to come. Mr. Speaker, the question everyone is asking is, when will something be done to stop this gun violence? And if so, when will we start to see these results? Thank you.
I recognize the honour member for Corozal Southwest.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, my fellow parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, may I please refer to my notes? Okay, like what our fellow parliamentarian said from Orange Walk North, children are the present and they are the future. So what they do now will affect them in the future. Also, like what another parliamentarian from Caribbean Shore said, poverty. A lot of poverty is happening and it's involving with young people. They will do anything that it takes to provide food to the table to their family or trying to help, which means they will involve in a lot of gangs, violence, and even things that they shouldn't even be thinking of. Now, the thing is, what will happen to our young people if they continue involving themselves in crime and violence? What will our future be? And the thing is, our young people, we have the potential to do everything we can do, but we just need the right people to support us, and that is why I am in full support of this bill.
I recognize the honourable member for Belmopan.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, my fellow parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes? What causes crime and violence associated with youths in Belize? According to the Belize Crime Observatory, from January to July 2021, Belize suffered 60 reported homicides, down fractionally from 63 seen in the same period last year. And in 2020, homicides reached 102, a marked improvement on the 134 killings in 2019. 99% of Belizean youths have been exposed to violence. 47% of convicted crimes in Belize were ages between 16 to 25, and murder rate 41%. The main causes of crime and violence are non-enrollment in school, poverty, trauma, stress, anxiety, and fear. 60% of youths between the ages 14 to 17 are not being enrolled in school. Poverty is another major cause. It has increased 33% in 2002 to 41% in 2009. Imagine how the statistics have increased, especially with COVID-19 also playing a major role. Trauma, stress, anxiety, and fear. Youths are being traumatized from seeing a dead body or hear a shooting take place. They are anxious whenever they hear those gunshots, and they fear the loss of losing someone they love or getting shot, just for the color of shirt they wear or because of their race, religion, family, and ethnicity. The norm is to shoot someone you have a problem with, and like that, children learn that violence is the only solution to their problems. They see other people doing it, so they think, well, why not do it too? They think it's something cool to do or that it's a trend. But in reality, this is all causing deaths week after week, and sometimes even day after day. As Article 4 states, the government has responsibility to make sure your rights are protected. They must help your family to protect your rights and create an environment where you can grow and reach your potential. We as parliamentarians have that responsibility now. We have to make that change today for the future generations. In addition, I support this bill because as Article 6 states, you have a right to be alive. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Port Loyola.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and to all members in this honorable building. We've heard the statistics of the crime and violence in our country, the youth involvement, and so I come to you today. Why must we not hold the adults of our country responsible? Where do these kids learn from? Do they not learn from us adults? Who are the ones responsible to teach them these morals? Are they not our adults? Our children have sense. Yes, they do. They are smart children. But if you are a young child and you grow up seeing one thing, that is the only thing you will learn. Our south side of Belize is deemed as one of the most dangerous areas. Why? Our adults have influenced our children and corrupted their minds to commit these crimes. 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds, these are babies, Your Honor. Mr. Speaker, sorry. How are they able to learn to fire a gun? They must be taught by an adult. How will they learn to steal? They must be taught by an adult. Children are like sponges. They take in what is around them. I blame our adults for not being there to teach them. Why should we not criminalize those who take advantage of our children? They are not here to be used, abused, or manipulated. We are here to protect and guide them in the right way of life. If we are not doing so, criminalize us. We're not doing our job. We need to lead our youth. These youth I am fighting for, we are fighting for. We need to sit in these seats and stand where we are and make these decisions in the future. How will they if they do not learn? We can't have criminals in these buildings. We can't have offenders in these buildings. Let us teach them to be honorable civilians, to be smart individuals. Let us guide them in the right direction. We cannot show them bad examples. As my mother would say, monkey see, monkey do, right? We see our adults committing these crimes. We'll do it too if I am a 4-year-old child and all I see growing up is murder and stealing and lying and dishonesty. That is what I will learn. Despite the morals, the adults manipulating our children are those who are to teach the morals. How will they learn if they are not taught the right thing? In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this proposed bill is a step in the right direction. It will not happen overnight or over the course of a week. But this step is better than not stepping at all. Thank you.
I recognize the honorable member for Albert.
Albert. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, honorable members, and good morning, Belize. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to oppose the proposed bill by the government. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Speaker. It is a good bill, but we need to focus on the main cause and why these children choose to join gangs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these children join these gangs because these gang members and gang leaders provide something for them that the government don't do. And these things are jobs, whether it be illegal or legal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I please ask that may I please refer to my notes from time to time. So, Mr. Speaker, we should focus on the main cause of crime and violence in Belize, which is poverty. According to UNICEF.org, open quotes, up to 50% of Belizean children are classified as poor, and 58% of Belize youths under 18 years old are classified as multidimensionally poor. End quotes. Mr. Speaker, this is just ridiculous. The government needs to find a way to reduce the rate of poverty in Belize. A simple way to do this is by lowering the cost of living in Belize. But instead, the government tried to reduce the cost of living in Belize. They continuously increase it by increasing the cost of fuel that cause a domino effect that cause the cost of living to go up even more. According to the SIB, the cost of living has increased by 4.1% since September in Belize City alone. Mr. Speaker, 1 month ago, I went to the store to purchase a large 123 oil. That 123 oil at the store was for $3.75. Mr. Speaker, 2 days ago, I went back to that same store to purchase that same 123 oil. The same 123 oil, Mr. Speaker, that was for $3.75 is now at $4.50.
I kindly ask you to wrap up your presentation.
Understand, Mr. Speaker? 1 pound of rice that was for $1 a pound is now at $1.50 a pound, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, before we try to go at the recruiters for grooming these children to commit crime, we need to find a way to stop the main cause of crime and violence in Belize, which is poverty. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Orange Walk North.
Pleasant good morning, fellow parliamentarians and Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask that I may use my notes as a reference. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, today I rise in support of the bill. Currently, our country has been facing not just the COVID-19 pandemic, but also a massive rise in crime and widespread unrest of crime committed against children. Reports from the Belize Crime Observatory has reported a high increase in the year 2021 due to gang rivalry, neglect, and the effects of the pandemic. Children aren't only being killed, but they are also being abused, pressured into violence, and committing unwanted acts, which can and do result in delinquent behavior and the life of criminal outbursts. If then begs the question, what is the value of a child's life? What is the value of a child who isn't our own? Mr. Speaker, exploitation of children is not happening all worlds away. It's happening right here, right now. We all in this honorable house have an idea of what the exploitation of children is, and I'm sure many of us have never really put ourselves to define it, probably because we know how painful it is to hear about it. It is disturbing. Mr. Speaker, and I want to warn the House, but it is my responsibility to voice the truth. I believe if we know more, we could dedicate ourselves to stopping this kind of criminal behavior. According to the Cambridgeshire Constabulary, child exploitation is when an abuser takes advantage of a young person for their own personal gain. This can take many forms, including sexual exploitation or forcing the child to commit a crime in exchange for drugs, gifts, money, in exchange for performing sexual activities. It is very devastating to tell how much less to hear, but it is important that it resides with us. This is exactly what many of our young girls and boys go through every day. This type of exploitation can happen to anyone and can be done from any social or ethnic background. Mr. Speaker, I strongly support this bill. For I believe it is our duty to commit to ensuring child exploitation offenders face justice and do not get away with their actions. Doug Boomy said, "Safety is a common denominator across all aspects of life. Hence, with knowledge be shared. It is not a matter for industry, it is a matter for humanity. Our children and youths are one of the most important assets for the future of our country.
Honourable Member, I kindly ask you to wrap up your presentation.
They will one day be teachers, doctors, nurses, and engineers, Mr. Speaker, and we should fight for nothing but the best. With that said, I give the bill my full support. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Danguta.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me the floor. Good morning to my fellow parliamentarians, and a pleasant good morning to all the viewers watching, especially the children of Belize. I want to wish you a happy Children's Day. Mr. Speaker, allow me to refer to my notes. I rise to recognize this honorable House and to make my contribution to this bill of national interest. Bad influences, Mr. Speaker, stem from all walks of life, including gang members, parents, trusted adults in high position in society. These adults are to be protectors, heroes, and champions for the children. Yet, instead, they use their influence to prey on their vulnerabilities. Many children oftentimes feel compelled into criminal activities. These children believe there is nowhere out because of the level of intimidation that these influencers pose, Mr. Speaker. And for what? Meager incentives like little money, food, or a sense of feeling belonged, all of which are their fundamental rights that the government of Belize has committed to uphold under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child to protect these children of this beautiful nation. Children who are pressured into criminal activity feel like there is nowhere out due to the high level of manipulation from these abusers. Because they do not know their rights. However, as cited in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child, Article 42 states that every child has the right to know their rights. Some children do know their rights, Mr. Speaker, but they lack courage and are afraid to speak up against it. I would like to say that all hope is not lost, because this bill stands to be a beacon to those children affected and to bring justice against their perpetrators. I find this bill most fitting with the current increase of crime and the involvement of children. For anyone who compels, coerces, induces, or invites a child to engage in criminal activities, Mr. Speaker, knowing or being reckless as to whether that person is a child commits the offense, that person or these persons must be penalized. I believe that the time has come for them to pay for endangering and wrecking the lives and hopes for the future generation of Belize. We must stand up to ensure the safety and protection for the children of this nation. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Belize Rural South.
I rise to make my contributions to this House and to voice the outcries of children across Belize. In recent years, the crimes committed by minors has seen hundreds of youth pass through courtrooms and into prison cells. Unfortunately, some have also died. Why must a young man or woman pay for a crime he or she was forced or manipulated into doing for the gain of adults who have strategically implanted themselves to have these children bend to their will? The most vulnerable youth are those who are raised in an environment where those around them are not held to the standards needed to nurture strong, resilient, and above all, children who know their rights. This bill seeks to reduce the risk of children being incarcerated by putting pressure on adults in communities to keep children in classrooms and off the streets where they may commit crimes. This legislation shall be a benchmark for the protection of our young people and is designed to give the justice system the power to persecute individuals who choose to exploit, induce, compel, coerce, or invite children to commit crimes. This bill seeks the protection of children's rights under Article 3 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. I urge all members of this Honorable House to support the passage of this bill for the betterment of all children in Belize. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Cayo West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I refer to my notes? Mr. Speaker, I rise today in agreement of this bill. This bill, Mr. Speaker, will give children back their life and their right to live. Taking these steaming guns and murderous weapons from the hands of these youths will give them opportunities to see beyond the dreaded mindset that violence equals violence. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to tell the story of a young 15-year-old Casman Gill. Young Casman Gill was a salutatorian of his graduating class and another youth whose life was lost in the hands of an unproductive decision. Casman Gill was hospitalized for 6 weeks after being targeted by a gunman while he was only 5 minutes away from his home. Mr. Speaker, this crime was committed yet by another youth. Young Casman Gill died while deteriorating in the ICU because we had yet again failed the youth of Belize. Mr. Speaker, reference to Article 6, every child has the right to be alive. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this bill will help to create a safer Belize for a child to be raised in. Mr. Speaker, I also believe that this bill is a step in the right direction because it will create a path towards the completion of the plan for a transformation into the safest place to raise a child from 2017 to 2030. Like my other members have discussed, Mr. Speaker, every child has the right to be protected from being hurt or mistreated in the body or mind. This, Mr. Speaker, is why this bill needs to be passed to protect the rights such as to be protected from harm and the rights to be alive. Mr. Speaker, this is what we should be doing for the youth of our country. That again is why I rise in agreement to this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Toledo East.
Morning. Mr. Speaker, can I reference my notes, please? I rise this morning to make my contributions to this bill. This bill is a necessary step to lower the crime rate in which evil persons continue to use our children to terrorize our families on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, our children have become both the victims and the perpetrators of these major crimes. One area that this bill will help is to allow the government to allocate more resources for rehabilitation for those children that have already been entangled by the tentacles of the criminal world, despite still being children. It is a reality, Mr. Speaker, that there are children that have become murderers because of the manipulation and deceit by adults who are full of greed and have no regard for life. This bill will also allow for educational awareness campaigns that will help equip parents and children to identify the indicators that signal the presence of criminal behavior that is known to lead to the recruitment of children in such activities. Mr. Speaker, the government and the families have the responsibility to protect our children, as Belize has committed to doing under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, I fully support this bill and encourage my fellow parliamentarians to support the passage of this important bill. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister and Minister of Economic Development and Investment.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable members. Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes? My fellow Belizeans, I am honored today to stand in support of this monumentous bill, which has the potential to reshape the future of our nation. Belize, or the Jewel, as we Belizeans so fondly refer to our country, is a land of incredible beauty and abundant natural resources. It is a land of great people with immeasurable potential, but more importantly, it is a land with a limitless future, a future that resides in our most precious resource, our children. However, That future is under threat by persons who seek to use our children to conduct criminal activity for their own personal gains. If we are to protect the future of our country, we can no longer ignore this vile behavior and continue to watch as our children's freedoms and lives are sacrificed by those that would seek to exploit them. Mr. Speaker, as leaders of this great nation, it is our patriotic duty to put an end to the hideous exploitation of our children. In addition, in 1990, as the fifth country to ratify the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, Belize gave its commitment to the world to ensure the protection of the inherent human rights of children. As stated in the preamble to the Convention and as indicated in the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, this child, by reason of his physical and mental immaturity, needs special safeguards and care, including appropriate legal protection before as well as after birth. This bill, therefore, not only enacts Belize's commitment to protecting the child's well-being and their right to life as stated in Article 1 and Article 6 of the Convention, but it also embodies our pledge to take appropriate legislative measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury or abuse, maltreatment or exploitation, and from being used in the illicit production and trafficking of narcotic drugs and substances. Belizean children, like all children across the world, must be protected against all forms of exploitation. However, we must recognize as a nation that this bill will only begin to address the symptoms of this societal illness. To truly cure this illness, we must understand that the cause is rooted in other equally disheartening societal problems, such as poverty, unemployment, and the demise of the family unit. Therefore, if we are to truly and effectively combat this threat to our future, we must continue to aggressively pursue solutions to all these societal ills, which are also direct causes of the exploitation of our children. As Mr. Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, said, and I quote, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. Believe, let us not lose our soul. Our children are our future, and the time to save our future is now." In ending, I wish all the children of Belize a happy Children's Day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children in the commission of an offense and to provide matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. The ayes have it.
Bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children in the commission of an offense, and to provide for matter connected therewith or incidental thereto. Committee of the Whole House on Bill.
Honorable members, the House will now resolve into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill that was read a second time. the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Criminal Justice Exploitation of Children in the Commission of Offenses Bill 2021 and passed it without amendment. I now move the third reading of a bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children in the commission of an offense and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children in the commission of an offense and to provide matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. The ayes have it.
Bill for an act to make it an offense for any person to recruit or groom children in the commission of any offense, and to provide for matter connected therewith or accidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Honorable members, the question is that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. The ayes have it. The House now stands adjourned.